Today, we're going to rank every major rifle of World War II, from the ones that got men killed to the one that made a country win a world war and changed warfare forever. D tier. Worst tier. The rifles that failed their soldiers. Rank 10. Carcano M91-38, Italy. Let's start at the very bottom. And I mean the very bottom. Picture this. It's 1940. You're an Italian infantryman somewhere in the scorched hills of North Africa. The enemy is 300 yards out. You raise your rifle, the Carcano M91-38, and you squeeze the trigger. The bullet leaves the barrel and lands somewhere. Maybe close, maybe not, because Carcano's designers decided to give it a barrel twist that made the bullet tumble in flight. I'm not exaggerating. The rifle had a slow 1 in 8-inch rifling twist, which was fine for a longer bullet. But with the short 7.35mm round they actually issued to soldiers, the bullet wobbled. It literally wobbled through the air. But wait, it gets worse. The fixed magazine holds only 6 rounds. Reloading is slow. The safety mechanism was so awkward that soldiers regularly fumbled with it under stress. And it was heavy, nearly 8 pounds for a rifle that couldn't shoot straight. This is the same family of rifle that Lee Harvey Oswald used decades later. Let that sit with you. The Carcano wasn't just bad, it was a symbol of a military apparatus that sent its own men into battle under-equipped and underprepared. Rank 9. Arisaka Type 99, Japan. Now Japan's entry. The Arisaka Type 99 is a fascinating case study in how a war can ruin a perfectly decent rifle. Early Type 99s, built in 1939-1940, were actually solid, well-machined, chambered in 7.7mm, strong action. American GIs who captured them were impressed. But here's the thing about Japan by 1943 and 1944. The empire was running out of everything: steel, machinists' time, resources. So they started cutting corners. The bolt handle went from a turned, polished piece of steel to a crude, bent rod. The monopod under the barrel, a genuinely clever feature, got deleted. Wooden stocks became rough, unsanded. Quality control essentially ceased to exist. Late-war Arisakas are some of the most dangerously inconsistent rifles ever issued to soldiers. Some wouldn't chamber rounds properly. Some had bolts that didn't lock fully. The Japanese military was sending men into battle with rifles that could fail at the worst possible moment. The early Type 99 doesn't belong on this list. The late-war version absolutely does. C tier. Bad tier. Good ideas, terrible outcomes. Rank 8. Ross Rifle, Canada. Carried into World War II. The Ross rifle is a ghost story. It was designed by Sir Charles Ross, a Scottish aristocrat who had never fought in a war, and it was, on paper, a masterpiece. Accurate enough to win international shooting competitions. Faster bolt throw than anything the British had. Beautiful, precision-engineered. And in the trenches of France, it killed the men who carried it. The Ross rifle's fatal flaw was dirt, mud, the basic reality of warfare. Its tight tolerances, perfect for a shooting range, were catastrophic in the field. Mud got into the action and the bolt would jam. Not slow down, jam completely. Soldiers would press the bolt down with their boot and still couldn't open it while under fire. Even more terrifying, the Ross bolt could be reassembled incorrectly, perfectly, smoothly, after cleaning, and when the soldier fired it, the bolt would blow back into his face. Soldiers were blinded, killed by their own weapon. By 1916, most Canadian frontline soldiers had thrown their Ross rifles away and picked up Lee-Enfields from dead British soldiers. Their commanders made it official and withdrew the Ross. Some Canadian snipers continued using it. The accuracy was genuinely extraordinary, but as a standard infantry rifle, it was a death sentence. Rank 7. Gewehr 43, Germany. Germany entered the war supremely confident in its Kar-98K bolt-action rifle, and for the first 2 years, that confidence was justified. Then, they met the SVT-40. Soviet soldiers were walking around with semi-automatic rifles. Pull the trigger, the gun reloads itself. German soldiers had to work a bolt between every shot. On the Eastern Front, where battles happened at close range in brutal urban environments, that difference cost German lives. So, Germany rushed to produce the Gewehr 43, semi-automatic, 10-round detachable magazine, gas-operated. On paper, a response. In practice, a compromise. The G43 was heavy, over 9 pounds unloaded. Its gas system was unnecessarily complex, prone to fouling. It was expensive to produce, so Germany never made enough of them, and its accuracy, while decent with a scope, was mediocre in standard infantry use. Germany produced about 400,000 G43s. The US made over 4 million M1 Garands. The Gewehr 43 is the rifle that tells you Germany was losing the war, not just militarily, industrially, philosophically. They couldn't manufacture fast enough, couldn't simplify enough, couldn't think in terms of mass production warfare. The G43 is Germany's admission that the Americans and Soviets had figured something out that they hadn't. B tier, mid-tier, workhorses of the war. 6. Lee-Enfield No. 4, Britain and Commonwealth. There's a moment, probably recreated in every war film ever made, where a soldier chambers around, the metallic snick-clack of a bolt flying home. For a British or Commonwealth soldier in World War II, that sound came from a Lee-Enfield. The Lee-Enfield No. 4 is the most underrated rifle in this entire ranking. Here's what made it special: the fastest bolt action ever put into mass service. A trained British soldier could fire 15 rounds per minute with aimed accuracy, a technique called the Mad Minute. In a world still dominated by bolt actions, that rate of fire was extraordinary. The Germans thought they were being engaged by machine guns. 10-round magazine, strong, smooth action, reliable in sand, mud, jungle, snow. British soldiers fought everywhere, and the Enfield went with them. Its weakness was accuracy at extreme ranges. Beyond 400 yards, the .303 rounds started to drop off. The Springfield and Kar-98K were more accurate at long distance. But in the close, chaotic fighting that dominated most of WW2, the Lee-Enfield was terrifying. It sits at number 6 not because it was flawed, but because the rifles above it changed what was possible. Rank 5. Mosin-Nagant M1903A3, Soviet Union. The Mosin-Nagant is the rifle equivalent of the Soviet soldier himself. Brutal, simple, indestructible, doesn't complain, gets the job done. This rifle was designed in 1891. By 1941, it was 50 years old, and the Soviet military was still issuing millions of them, not because they couldn't afford better, but because the Mosin was genuinely, deeply reliable in a way that more sophisticated rifles couldn't match. Temperatures on the Eastern Front dropped to -40. German rifles, precisely engineered, tighter tolerances, froze. The Kar-98K bolt would stick in those temperatures. The Mosin? Keep cycling. It was designed with enough play in the action that frost and dirt had nowhere to cause real problems. Soviet snipers took the Mosin-Nagant and turned it into an instrument of psychological terror. Vasily Zaitsev, Ludmila Pavlichenko, 309 confirmed kills, one of the most lethal snipers in human history, both used the Mosin. The Finnish sniper Simo Haiha, the most lethal sniper ever recorded, used a modified Mosin-Nagant in the Winter War and racked up over 500 kills without a scope. It was long, nearly 4.5 feet with the bayonet, heavy, and had a brutal recoil. Firing 100 rounds in training left soldiers bruised, but on the Eastern Front, where the weather was the enemy as much as the Germans, the Mosins survived everything they threw at it. A tier, good tier, elite bolt actions. Rank 4, Springfield M1903A3, United States. Before the Garand arrived in significant numbers, America's rifle was the Springfield M1903A3, and even after the Garand took over, the Springfield refused to leave. Marine snipers carried it throughout the Pacific War. U.S. Army snipers used it in Europe. Any soldier who needed to reliably hit a target at 500, 600, 700 yards wanted a Springfield. It was accurate, extraordinarily accurate for a mass-produced military rifle. The .30-06 cartridge had reach and punch. The action was smooth. The rifle was well-balanced. Its limitation? 5 rounds, bolt action. In a war moving towards semi-automatic everything, the Springfield was carrying the philosophy of a previous era. But here's the thing about bolt-action rifles. A good bolt action in skilled hands will always be more accurate than a semi-automatic. There's something about the deliberate, controlled cycle of the bolt that forces a shooter to slow down, breathe, think. Pacific snipers used the Springfield to pick off Japanese officers at ranges that would have been meaningless with a Garand. Rank 3. Karabiner 98K, Germany. If World War II had ended in 1941, the Karabiner 98K might be sitting at number 1 on this list. It is, without question, the finest bolt-action rifle ever mass-produced, full stop. German engineers had been refining the Mauser action for 60 years before the K98K arrived. The result was mechanical perfection. Smooth, controlled round-feed bolt, reliable extractor, adjustable rear sight out to 2,000 meters, though nobody was realistically shooting at 2,000 meters. That adjustment told you everything about German precision thinking. The trigger was exceptional. The 7.92 by 57 mm cartridge was powerful, accurate, and flat shooting. At 400 yards, a trained Heer soldier could consistently hit man-sized targets. At 600 yards with a scope, German snipers with the K98K dominated the Eastern Front in the early years. Why number 3 and not number 1? Because war isn't a shooting competition. The K98K held 5 rounds. 5. After 5 shots, you were reloading every time, working the bolt, inserting a stripper clip, while your enemy, if he had a Garand, had fired 8 without interrupting his sight picture once. The K98K is the masterpiece of a doctrine that was already becoming obsolete. A perfect answer to the wrong question. S tier, best tier, the rifles that rewrote the rules. Rank 2, SVT-40, Soviet Union. The rifle that nobody talks about, the one that should be famous. In 1940, the Soviet Union introduced the SVT-40, a semi-automatic rifle chambered in 7.62 by 54 mm R, 10-round detachable magazine, gas-operated, weighing about 8.5 pounds. On paper, it sounds like a slightly heavier Garand, but the story of the SVT-40 is not about the rifle itself. It's about what it did to everyone else. When German soldiers first encountered Soviet troops armed with SVT-40s on the Eastern Front in 1941, they were genuinely shocked. The Soviets had semi-automatic infantry rifles before Germany did. They had infantry rifles before America was even in the war. Germany immediately began studying captured SVT-40s. The gas system design directly influenced the Gewehr 43, which, as we discussed, never quite matched the original. Finland used captured SVT-40s and loved them. German soldiers preferred them to their own Kar-98K for close-range combat. For elite Soviet units, snipers, guards regiments, naval infantry, the SVT-40 with a scope was a devastating weapon. For the average conscript, the Mosin-Nagant was actually more practical. The SVT-40 sits at number 2 for what it was and what it inspired. Rank 1, M1 Garand, United States. And now we arrive at the end, the top, the rifle that General George S. Patton, a man not given to complimenting anyone, called the greatest battle implement ever devised, the M1 Garand. John Cantius Garand was a Canadian-American engineer working at the Springfield Armory in Massachusetts. He spent over a decade refining his design, and in 1936, the United States became the first major nation in the world to adopt a semi-automatic rifle as its standard infantry weapon. Think about what that means. In 1936, while Germany, Britain, Japan, and the Soviet Union were still issuing bolt-action rifles to their soldiers, every American infantryman was about to receive a weapon that could fire 8 aimed shots without touching the action. 8 shots, the last of which was a distinctive metallic ping as the empty en-bloc clip ejected from the receiver. A sound that became one of the most recognizable sounds of the Pacific Theater. The Garand fired the powerful .30-06 cartridge, same round as the Springfield sniper rifle. It was accurate to 500 yards in standard infantry use. It weighed 9.5 pounds, heavy but manageable. It was reliable in sand, mud, jungle, rain, and cold. But the genius of the Garand isn't in any one specification, it's in the arithmetic. A German soldier with a Kar-98K and a good soldier's training could fire about 12 aimed shots per minute. An American soldier with a Garand, the same level of training, could fire 30. That's not a small advantage, that's a different category of soldier. In Normandy, in the Hurton Forest, in the Philippines, everywhere Americans fought, the Garand's semi-automatic advantage compounded. It wasn't just that Americans shot faster, it changed how American infantry tactics worked.
If you liked this video, I'm sure you'll like this one too. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. Our channel is small, so we are replying every comment below. Comment any suggestion for future videos. Thanks for watching.